Okay. I'm gonna let it do this for a minute to make sure Raycon says to wait. So I'm just waiting, and then I'll introduce you. All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf podcast where top real estate agents tell how they do it. And today, a good friend of mine is here on the show from Asheville, North Carolina, with Premier Sotheby's International Realty, Janet Whitworth. Janet, thank you for joining us today. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Jere. Thank you for having me. It's so good to see you. It's been too long.
It's been way too long. So thank you for coming again. And today we're going to talk a little bit about everybody. We've got, so many luxury agents on the show. And I brought Janet. You came back on. I think you were well before episode 100. And we've got you back on today because I wanted to talk about, you're an agent that you've been in business for 18 years. Mm-hmm. You've had your first year, you did 45 million. Everybody first year in real estate, you did 44 million. And you've carried out your career for 18 years very successfully.
Well, so, I don't think it was my first year, 44 million, but it was within the first 3 or 4. Yeah.
So in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. I remember that back then when somebody did 17 million, it was a big deal. So 44 million at the beginning of your career, and you've carried that out for 18 years. So today we're going to talk about just establishing your business over the years and reflecting on what you've learned and kind of paying it forward to us to what we can learn from you to get where you are.
Well,
I'll get more specific with a question. Now go ahead.
That's okay. That's a pretty broad. Yeah, there's a lot to that could be said to that.
Go ahead.
But Jere, I started out treating real estate as a business from the very beginning. I mean, I was very disciplined. I think if that was what led to my success, was being disciplined, getting up in the morning. I'd been in the corporate world for many years and in sales, so I knew how important it was to get up and get going in the morning. And I worked long, hard days to learn the business because it takes a long time to learn this business, and a lot of
it does.
It takes a long time. There's a lot to learn. So I worked really hard and I put the hours in, and I treated it like I was an entrepreneur. And for an entrepreneur to be successful, they've got to put the hours and the time and the work in.
And there's something you got to learn it, like you said. So you were in you said, so everybody, just to kind of give them the overview of how you got into this, you were in the corporate world, and then you were an on-site luxury agent, and then you transitioned into resales and luxury. What was the corporate job that you had before you transitioned into real estate?
Oh, I was selling large contract printing and business forms, which most people now this day don't even know what business forms were. But I worked for a corporation out of Dayton, Ohio, selling to large companies throughout Florida. I spent 8 years in the Tampa, Florida region working for them in sales and sales management.
So you took that when you came into real estate. So you took that. How did that opportunity in, what was the name of the development that you represented?
The Cliffs communities.
The Cliffs. Mm-hmm. So when you transitioned, and how did that opportunity come your way, and why did you take it?
It's like a lot of things in life. I just knew somebody. I had known somebody for a long time who was heading up sales there, and they knew that I was good at what I did, and they just called and said, here's an opportunity for you to totally change your career path. You're learning it's still sales, but it's real estate. And I looked at the opportunity because this community was, and still is, the leading luxury community in the Asheville area. And I said, sure, I'm ready to try something new. And that was in 2003. And as you know, that was an excellent time to get into luxury real estate because the market just was really good for a number of years until 2008. And then it all, the luxury market trashed. Yeah, and I had to completely relearn the real estate business from what I knew. So I learned how to sell anything. Yeah, I learned how to sell anything. I got a coach I
And
had
you
a
did that in
coach.
2000, you did that in 2008?
No, I did it about 2010.
Okay.
I was still in development sales with another entity for a couple of years, and the recession was just brutal here. And
Wasn't it?
so
Yeah.
I decided to start my own company. So I started my own company, Whitworth Properties, and was very successful with that for 5 years. And during that whole time, I had a coach.
And you started Whitworth Properties in 2010?
10. Mhm.
Okay, so let's get backwards just for a minute because but I want to get through all of it because this is really, because you're such a business person and so organized in how you do and handle things. So when you came in when you came into the business, so you're in the corporate world, you transition into on-site sales. Was there much difference? Because I wanted the transition from corporate to on-site to resell. What was the transition like from your corporate? It was still a sales job, but it was more corporate to on-site for the Cliffs.
Well, the basics of sales and being in business for yourself, which is what you are when you're a real estate broker, all were the same. The same skills that I used in my sales career in the corporate world, I continued to use in real estate, and that was let the customer talk. Like, listen to the customer. What do they need and meet those needs? So that's what I did, and it served me well because where I was for 5 years, I pretty much only worked with buyers. And when a buyer came in there, you do understand their needs, or you're not successful with them. So same skill set. I would say same skill set, just learning different techniques and technology.
New
And
industry.
yeah. And then when I
go ahead.
When I went into what I refer to as general brokerage, listing and selling all over, I branched out during the recession, and I was doing a large territory because I wanted to be successful. So that was a big learning curve in the beginning because I had never really listed property. And there was a big learning curve there on how to do that. But my coach always said, if you focus on listings and you're successful with listings, you will have a very successful career because listings bring buyers. And so when I heard that, I bought into it. Like I said, I had him for 5 years as a coach, and I got up to where, I was carrying 30 to 35 listings at a time. So,
which was our interview.
Yeah.
Our last interview, you had 33 listings at the time.
Yeah.
So talking about that, I want to repeat something you said earlier. I love, like you said, let them talk. When you're dealing with clients, you let them talk. You listened to what they said and you heard what they needed, number two. And number three, you delivered on that.
Yeah.
So you transition out of corporate sales with that to real estate sales with that, into resell with that. But there was a little bit of a learning curve on, you understand the basics of let them talk, listen to them, and deliver on what they need. What were the biggest challenges in going into resell? And even with all of your experience, what do you think that learning curve? What were the things you thought you knew, you didn't know, ahas, all that good stuff?
The biggest learning curve for me was helping people understand how I could get their home sold. So a buyer pretty quickly becomes comfortable with me and my knowledge of real estate and the area, and my ability to ask the right questions to learn what it is that they need or want when they buy a home or get their next home. But as a seller, I had to learn how to instill in them the confidence that I could sell their home. But it still goes back to very much the same thing though. It's asking them questions. What do they need? What do they want? What's their motivation for selling? What's their timeline? Do they is money more important or is time on market okay? So it's still back to asking the questions, knowing the questions to ask and listening to the answers. And that won me lots of listings.
I mean, we're done with this interview. Like, that's the best advice ever.
Yeah, I never wowed
Ask
them.
the right questions. Go ahead.
Particularly when it was Whitworth Properties Incorporated and it was just me and a full-time assistant, I didn't try to wow them with my marketing expertise, because during the recession, marketing really wasn't working that well. I hate to say that, marketers, but, and I couldn't really wow them with my incredible marketing, but I just tried to help instill in them the confidence that I could sell it for them and that I was there with them by their side through the process. And that really won a lot of listings for me. Now I'll take that to a whole different mindset once the market improved. Whitworth Properties had been successful for 5 years. Then I knew that I needed real marketing, and that's why I went to the Sotheby's franchise. I mean, real marketing, the branding, the name,
the
brand,
PR, the name.
Yeah.
Well, and all the exposure we get for every single property.
Yeah.
It would cost thousands of dollars per listing otherwise, really.
Yeah.
Comes in such a grand scale.
Yeah. So
wow.
When they came to Asheville to open up a franchise here, Premier Sotheby's, they actually reached out and I said, yes, it's a no-brainer for me with being a specialist in the luxury market. Sotheby's is entering your market. It was just perfect fit for me. And I've been there 6 years.
Wow. It's being on the forefront of that as well. So 2010 to 2015, you had your own brokerage. 2015 to 2021, you've been with Sotheby's International Realty. Yep. And now, what would you say the difference? Because at one point in your career, even when we talked on the show, oh my gosh, it's been a long time. It may have been 3. I can't believe if it's been 3 years, but it might have been. Wow. So 3 years ago, you were, 30 something listings. And now you've transitioned and you're highly successful, highly competent, but you're really letting the business come to you now. What's the differences? What's your advice as you reflect back on what all of your accomplishments and experience over the years?
As I reflect back, I look at, so one of to get all those listings, I time blocked. You've heard, everybody knows that. I made tons of phone calls every day. I was implementing every sales technique I knew to get the listings and get the business. By doing that, I now have the luxury to just let it come. I have an incredible database of clients, and I can let it come as it comes. And if it's something I don't want, I refer it out. And that's, you often ask people about their aha moments, and I've had a lot of them in real estate, some very significant ones. But my most recent one came during COVID. It's when I realized that I don't have to say yes to every opportunity that comes my way anymore. I can say no, thank you. I'm not the right fit. I can't give you the service that you need. And it's because of where I am in my business, it is a blessing that I can do that, but it's only because I worked hard for it.
And I think, is there a fear that if you say no, that everybody else is going to assume no and not keep coming your way?
There is that.
That's what, what makes it hard to say no if you're not, right?
Yeah.
And now what gives you the courage, for lack of a better word? It's courage for me. But what would you call it to say no?
For you it is, but I'm in a totally different point in my career right now. And I realized that I don't have to be on top anymore. I was in both careers, corporate world. I've made it to the top in wherever I was. And I'm okay now with not being on top anymore. That's just that's where I am, and it's a great place to be. I'm able to have better quality of life, and but it's only because I want to keep going back to that, because I know you've got a lot of young brokers that ought to be listening to this podcast if they want to be successful. But the only reason I have that luxury now is because I worked my butt off for 16, 17 years in real estate, worked it off before that in another sales career. And now I can, it is a great business if you can get to the point where I am right now. I will tell you, it's fun. I have very little stress, Jere. And you know what that feels like, the stress that we women particularly bring on when we've got all these listings and all these people counting on us. We carry all that stress. And I've been able to ease into a place that is just beautiful. And it's thanks to real estate. There aren't many careers where you can call the shots like this, still be somewhat successful, and just love it. I love it.
That's a great point, because a lot of people in our business say that, when you become a real estate agent, and I'm guilty of it, if you want to stay in it, you just keep working harder and harder and harder. But you've built that up, and now you can actually you've gotten to a place where it is worth it to earn it. And you've got to a place where you can not have to be put out of business or be retired or whatever they do in the corporate world, and you're way too ahead of the game for that. But you're in a place where you can really just choose and serve the people that you will serve best. And how do you, if you don't mind sharing, how do you, do you have any, or how many people do you want to serve now? Do you just let it come and decide when it arrives? Tell us what your world looks like now compared to just a few years ago.
It's totally different. First of all, everything I list, I sell immediately. So it's impossible to, which is great. It's great. Building up to 30 listings is not even anywhere near possible. 10 right now in this market would be unbelievable. As soon as I list them, I sell them. So, and I've got them lined up right now that are coming. I see them coming down the road. So it's really manageable. My business is, it's very manageable right now, and I love it. Another aha moment I had during the pandemic, I think a lot of us had a shift in the way we look at things, but it was that quality of life was more important to me than working hard. Good quality of life was more important than working hard. And I'd always put work first ahead of everything. I started working when I was 15 years old, and you and I have shared that we've always worked. And I realized that I could have downtime, that I could truly have downtime. But to get that, I've had to say no a lot more often. Well, I would never say no before unless it was just a listing that, I didn't think warranted, was not a good, if it wasn't a good listing, I would say no. But now I say no to 25%, 30% of what comes my way. If it doesn't feel good, I'm not going to do it anymore.
Yeah. Now, if you're a side comment to that, I think, and tell me what you think, in this current market, I find that I've always said people decide to hire you well before they hire you. But also they're looking for experienced agents because it is a hot market. So they want to be sure they know they have somebody who knows how to navigate this. It might happen fast, but they want the person who knows how to navigate it and navigate it well.
Yep. That's exactly why I just got a listing recently. They hired me for my experience because they knew it was a hot market. They wanted to get the very most for their money and have it be the least painful for them and their family. And I sat and talked with them and learned all of that. And they interviewed 3 agents and they chose me because of my experience and ability to, like you said, ability to navigate this market, because it's an interesting time.
And to that, I'm going to transition to something we talked about before, but in this current market, so everybody who's just scrolling through podcasts right now, this one was recorded coming out of COVID in, what are we, May of 2021. This is going to release mid-May 2021, but right now it's early May 2021. So this market, like when the market blew up in 2006 and 7, and then we had the Great Recession in 2008 and 2009, and in 2010, we were coming back, but nobody believed it. And now 2021, this market, I call it, and I took this from David Bomig, our CEO at Atlanta Fine Homes, is the inverse of our other really hot market back in 2006. And that even includes being hired. I think being hired right now, people are hiring agents for experience because it's such a strong market. But I'm going to let you talk to things that you would really pointed out before about this market versus 2006 versus 2021.
Well, the biggest thing is there's not the speculation that we saw, you know, and that speculation was fueled by people, you know, able to get money from, you know, it was just a lot of speculation. Today's buyer is an end user. They want a house. They're ready to upgrade. You know, I was actually shocked when this market took off last year like it did. I didn't see it coming. I don't know. Did you? Did you see it coming? Did you?
No, not at all. I do remember during COVID going, no, of all times, I would have thought now would have been the time to have a corporate job, but it was the worst time.
Yeah.
And of all times, I lost one transaction throughout COVID. One. Everything else closed. And other deals actually closed because of my experience in watching what was happening and who could do, you know, there was the whole different banks and different institutions could and couldn't do loans on for different reasons, and having that knowledge to keep certain deals together.
Yeah.
And then, but everything just kind of kept going. And I thought, well, what's going to happen? But I'm glad I'm okay. And then it took off. Yeah.
Yeah. Same here. Yeah. I didn't lose anything.
If you watch the movies about pandemics, that doesn't happen. Go ahead. I interrupted you. Go ahead. About the same thing happened.
Yeah. I mean, I had a very serious lull for, you know, a couple of months, but then it just took off. And it's been interesting, but yeah, the lack of speculators has actually been good. Working with people who want a home for their family is awesome. We're fortunate here in Asheville. Asheville, North Carolina has always been a desirable place to live, but we have a lot of economic motivators that are happening to improve our market, including the fact that people can live anywhere. Many people now, many more can live anywhere and work from home. And so I had a buyer from Indiana. Why would he want to live in Indiana when he can live in Western North Carolina in the Blue Ridge Mountains that you see in the background there?
So yes, everybody, this is one of Janet's listings in Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah, that's so overlooking the Grove Park Inn, Country Club and Golf Course.
Here, I'll move over so everybody can see how beautiful. Yeah.
It's a great place.
You also had said, because this is relevant to all of us listening on just everybody, it's like you got to know your market. So then you said earlier in this interview is you've got to know your market. You've got to know what you're doing, and it takes a long time to learn. You've got to learn how to listen, how to ask questions, and actually know about the market and what to do with it. And in that, right now, you had said before we started recording, we were kind of just catching up. The supply and demand now is very different from what it was. There is legitimate demand, not just, like you said, speculative buyers that's creating this kind of false demand. And then you've got a low amount of supply. And I wonder, between you and me, and I'm kind of like, you know, throwing this at you out of the blue, but what's going to happen? Like, is there going to be this inverse, or a lot of people buying second homes and they're going to finally sell their first homes? And is that going to blow the inventory back up, or do we even know?
I have no idea how this is going to turn out. It's interesting. I just, Jere, I don't know. A lot of the people that I'm working with are selling a home in another state and moving here. They're just relocating. We're getting a lot of people just relocating. A few second home buyers, but mostly people relocating.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible the amount of people moving right now. I think you had said something earlier about the amount of people moving and then the number of people who can now afford a home that couldn't before. But what's nice about this market is that you actually have to qualify for the loan and have a down payment.
Yeah.
It's kind of a good thing.
Yeah.
So that just reinforces that the market is stable and secure, and maybe we're going somewhere good with all this.
It feels very stable. I think it's very stable, and I have a little bit of concern about building costs slowing down.
Oh, definitely.
Inventory, because we need homes to sell. We need in Asheville. We need developers out there building homes for us to sell.
Right now, they're willing to pay the difference in the cost, but it's hurting the builder's profit margin.
Yep.
And that's a little bit scary. And eventually, where's stuff going to catch up?
Yep. Yep.
That's the crazy part. So anyway, now we're going to start closing out, Janet. Going back into your career now, and then I don't know if you remember, I don't even know if we had the final three. We do the final three questions now. I don't think we've come up with those yet, but you'll like them, don't worry. But transition back into where you are now. Give us what's been your biggest lesson learned from this business overall over the years?
One of the biggest lessons that I have learned in this business is to learn from those who went before me, learn from those who are more successful than me. I've always had a tendency to not be comfortable, and I got over this about 10 years ago. But it was a big turning point for me, is to ask other people for help and to learn from people like yourself that are very successful, to reach out to other brokers and agents in other markets and learn what they're doing, and understand that they're not going to want to hold that information, that they're just like me and they want to share it. And so, learning from others and reaching out to others for help was one of the biggest things I had to learn to do that helped me be successful.
What made it so hard to do that in the first place?
Pride. Not wanting people to know that I didn't know it all, Jere. I wanted everybody to think I knew everything.
I mean, hey, that's a realtor. We know it all. That's why you have to hire us. So isn't it funny how the more I remember as I've become more and more seasoned in this, I just share more and more. And sometimes I've even thought to myself, why am I telling them all this? This has made me so much success. And there's two things. Number one, they don't do it half the time.
No.
And the other thing is when they do, they become successful, and their success always somehow comes back to me. Always.
You need to keep doing that. You need to keep doing that. You need to
back at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back at you.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna travel and sit on a sandy beach quite a lot. You, my friend, are gonna keep helping other people.
Fine. That's what this podcast is all about, right?
Yes, it is.
Anyway, and we were talking about that before the show. So some of this, y'all, Jenna is giving me a hard time about what we were talking about before, about the podcast, and some of you know about a workshop that has launched. If you want to know more, just you know how to find me. That's doing surprisingly well, and we've not talked about it, and we will eventually. But
I think Jere Metcalf needs to be a real estate coach.
Do you? Let's see her go.
Yeah.
Apparently I'm not bad at it. But we're interviewing Janet Whitworth today. Y'all can like comment and give your comments later and tell us what y'all all think about us in the meantime. Everybody listening. All right. One other, and then the final three. What would you say is of all of your quote ahas, and maybe it's the same, what do you find, or no, I'm going to spin it because that was already an aha, it's your last question. What, if you could go back to yourself coming into this business as a real estate agent, what would you tell yourself? What advice could you use, or what do you wish you knew that you know now? What do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Wow. I'm finding that one tough because I'm going right back to what we already talked about, and that was that you need to learn to ask for help.
Yeah, then that might be it.
That is it. You've got to learn to ask for help instead of trying to do it all on your own and figure it out on your own. Learn to ask for help. The other thing would be to probably take a little better care of yourself and not work quite so hard. Find a little more work-life balance than you did for so many years. So yeah, that's probably.
How would you, here's a question. How do you convince yourself to do, because we all know, but how do you convince yourself? It's so hard to say no.
It's very difficult.
Other than a pandemic. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, that helped me learn what it was all about. But you know, when it's very difficult for a type A personality like we have, high achiever, driven. It's hard to do. It's really, I didn't do it. I mean, I didn't have it. I've only learned to have it in the past year. So I'm talking about something that I never did.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm asking you, because you know, you and I have that in common. I'm getting a little better, but I'm not so great. You're a lot better than me now. Yeah. I'm a little ahead. I love it. I love it. You're like, she's like, yep, no answer for y'all other than like, no, really. And here's here's the final three. The number one is, what have you found your best resource in being a successful agent? And we might even go, I always like to learn about like something, like is there a CRM or something in technology or any other tool that you feel like has really been a powerful tool in making you successful?
My database. And without a database, you can never truly be successful in real estate. You've got to have a database, you've got to maintain it, you've got to use it. So, and I don't use, we have a proprietary database program in Premier Sotheby's now, so I don't use any of those that you always used to talk about. I don't know who you're using now.
Yeah. I'm actually working on building one out. So, but yeah, I have one that we use religiously with a pipeline in it, but we're building our own out through Pipedrive. But yeah, but no, so what does that look, what does that mean for you, a database? Does that mean like you're using actual CRM and keeping up with it every day? And do you use one that tells you what to do every day? Okay.
Yeah, I don't keep up with it anymore every day, but I can go to that database and I can pull out my luxury buyers in Florida and I can send them that house there overlooking the Grove Park Inn because, you know, I bet 95% of them have been to the Grove Park Inn. And so, you know, I can keep myself in front of those people in some way or the other. And I also have a database of people who I have worked with in transactions for the last at least 10 years, maybe a little, it may go back even a little longer. They get a gift from me one time a year. So the month of their anniversary, they get a gift. And it's nothing big. It's a local, locally made chocolates or locally made candle. We had a new art museum open, tickets to the new art museum, local things. And that keeps me plugged into those people. And when they are ready to sell or buy, they call me. So I think
that's your anniversary gift from when they bought their house, right?
Yeah.
I love
So people
that.
from 2010, May of
I'm still getting a
2010,
gift from you.
they got a locally hand poured candle this year. So yeah, yep. Every month it goes out. But I think
So that's that right there is the most brilliant one. But go ahead.
yeah, the key is your database. I mean, you can have all this fancy technology, and really spend too much time with it instead of being on the phone. Oh, well, you know, the most important thing we've ever had in real estate is the phone, and actually
Exactly.
making the
Yeah,
call.
I'm supposed to tell you the phone can't be one of the tools because that is
I
the
know.
tool, right?
I remember
That is the tool. We even forget now. I forget to tell you not to say it because that is the tool.
Yeah.
Next question. If there's a book that's changed your career, really made a good impact on you, life-wise or career-wise, what is it that we just have to read?
Well, it's a little, well, you've read it. It's very new age, I guess would be the right word.
Oh, which one? The Four
Untethered
Agreements?
Soul, The Untethered Soul.
Yes.
Yeah.
Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, which he goes by Mickey, just FYI, because I research authors once I become obsessed. He goes by Mickey Singer, just so you know. But Michael Singer, Untethered Soul. And his bio, what's his bio? Do you remember? The Surrender Experiment.
Yeah.
The Surrender Experiment is literally his autobiography. It's a great one.
I haven't read that. I did just read another one that I found very, very good, and it was by John Izzo, I-Z-Z-O. The 5 Things You Must Learn Before You Die. It's very good. Yeah, I think that's the right.
And what are they? Or do you remember? Or what was the big takeaway from that?
Loving what you do. You know, love what you do. Enjoy what you do, because a big part of your time is spent doing it.
Right. So you always spin it back to me, and then I start doing that when I talk to you. But that's exactly what you're trying to tell me earlier in our interview. Yep. And for everybody listening too, love what you do. Read 5 Things Before You Die. Untethered Soul, what was your big takeaway from that one?
I'm not the crazy monkey brain thoughts in my head. That's not me. That's not who I am. That's just my brain doing its work. But the my essence, my inner self is not that. Now, don't try to make me explain what it is, but it's not the.
It's you.
Crazy, yeah, it's
the thoughts in your head when you're angry. That's not who you are. That's something else going on, or whatever it is. You've got to read his autobiography, because he talks about the moment that occurred to him in his autobiography. He's like sitting in his friend's apartment or something, and he's like he was young, and you would love it, because it then brings Untethered Soul. Like, it makes it even more fun to read when you read what he went through in his whole career. He went from practically homeless, which was fine with him because he was untethered soul. He was just you're not your thoughts, to billionaire flying around in a jet. And then it talks about, and then he still ends up going through hell. You'll have to read it, but he talks about, as everything comes his way, good or bad, his perceptions and his reactions to it, as someone who had the philosophy of you aren't your thoughts. And it's about, like, you have to read it. I'm going to stop. I'm talking too much anyway. This is about real estate, but it's a good book, everybody, to read and check out, especially in our business.
Yeah, and there's one more. Yeah. I probably brought this up in the last podcast you and I did together, but I think it is a must read if you want to be successful in business, and that's Stephen Covey. I still use
The 7 Habits.
Yes.
Highly Successful People. That one. Yeah.
Yes. That big rocks. Put the big rocks in first.
Yeah.
That analogy with the jar and the big rocks.
I think about that all the time.
The pebbles and the sand and the water. I still use that in my mind and my brain, and tell myself, let's do the big rocks first. We probably won't get to the pebbles or the sand, but we really need to just focus on the big rocks first. And then there's sharpen the saw. I mean, I
Oh,
can remember some of the
yes.
yeah.
That sharpening the saw is one I have finally learned. It's amazing when you spend that time. Yes, put the big rocks in first, because I think those two could be confused. Focus on the big stuff first, but also sharpen your saw. And that doesn't mean you're focusing on little things that matter. Those are the things that have your tools, have your organization, have your systems in place. Because that's one. Let me tell everybody, listen, back to Janet. I mean, talk about some great advice that has changed my life. That one will give you some peace right there to sharpen the saw a little bit before you hack at the tree.
Yeah.
For those of you who haven't read it, read it. All right, last question. This one's easy peasy, I think. If there's one thing you would have us remember from this conversation, everybody listening today, because we have a lot more listeners, Janet, than we used to. What is the one thing that you would have us take away and remember from our interview? If we're going to forget everything else, what's the one thing to remember?
It's about the service to the people and not the deal. Serve the
You're
people.
going to cry. It's so true. Like, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's obvious if you've been in it as long as Jere and I have, if you're all about the deal, it's obvious. And if it's obvious to us, it's obvious to your buyer, your seller. So be about the service, serve the people, and your business will be successful.
So true. Beautiful. Thank you. So good to see you.
Good seeing you, Jere. Thank you for having me on here.
You're welcome. And thank you for being on.
Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. If you like this episode, please share it with friends. To find more episodes, search Jere Metcalf Podcast on any platform for podcasts, or go to JereMetcalfPodcast.com. That's JereMetcalf podcast.com.